Why the majority is often wrong. In the sun-scorched lands where the desert meets the horizon, there was a small, isolated too. Life was a delicate balance, dictated by the sun, the sand, and the single communal well that was its heart. In this town lived a man named Harith. He was known for a mind as sharp as a desert hawk's eye, but this intelligence was often veiled by a deep-seated desire to simply fit in. Harith's childhood was a tapestry of conflicting threads. He was a gifted boy, absorbing knowledge with an ease that astonished his elders. The town's wise scholar, Sheikh Amin, saw the boy's potential early on, often spending hours with him, nurturing his curiosity about the world and the wisdom of their faith. A mind like yours, Harith, the Sheikh would say, is a gift from Allah. It is meant to seek truth, not comfort. But outside the Sheikh's gentle guidance, Harith's world was different. His family were not originally from the town. They had arrived as outsiders a generation ago, and the label had subtly clung to them. He remembered the sting of being the last one chosen for games, the quiet moments when conversations would cease as he approached. To earn his place, he learned to become agreeable, to nod when others nodded, to silence the questions that bubbled up in his brilliant mind. He found a fragile peace in the warmth of acceptance, even if it meant dimming his own light. He had learned that the crowd's approval was a shield, and he rarely dared to lower it. This internal conflict followed him into manhood. Harith often found himself in the town square, a silent participant in debates, his heart and mind pulling him in one direction while the tide of popular opinion pulled him in another. He would agree with the crowd, the words feeling hollow in his mouth, just to avoid the cold isolation of dissent. One sweltering afternoon, the townspeople gathered at the square. The air was thick with tension. The well was running lower than usual, and a critical decision had to be made about the distribution of its precious water. A powerful merchant, a man whose wealth gave his voice immense weight, stood and made a proclamation. "The water is a blessing for those who have built this town," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the landowners. "It should be reserved for those who own the land. For us, the laborers who only work the fields, can find their own means." A loud chorus of agreement rose from the majority. They were the established families, the ones who held influence. The laborers, standing at the edge of the crowd, their faces etched with exhaustion from the relentless sun, looked on in silent despair. Among them was Jamal, a childhood friend of Harith, a man who worked tirelessly to support his family. Harith saw the flicker of hope in his friend's eyes die, replaced by a familiar resignation. Harith's heart clenched. The injustice was a physical blow. Asa not just laborers, but the face of his friend, the weary faces of men who toiled for the town's prosperity. The Sheikh's words from his childhood echoed in his memory. "A mind like yours is meant to seek truth." He remembered a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. "Do not follow the majority blindly, for the majority can be led astray." Sunan Abu Dawud. The fear of isolation was a cold knot in his stomach, but the sight of Jamal's slumped shoulders, the blatant unfairness of the decree, it was a weight far heavier. Despite the loud, confident voices of the majority, Harith knew he could no longer remain silent. He took a breath and stepped forward. "Brothers," he began, his voice trembling slightly at first, but growing stronger with each word, "we must think carefully. Islam teaches us justice and compassion for all." He paused, letting his eyes meet those of the men he had spent a lifetime trying to please. "The Qur'an reminds us, O you who believe, stand firmly for justice, as witnesses to Allah, even if it be against yourselves, your parents, or your relatives." Surah An-Nisa 4-135, the crowd murmured. The merchant scoffed. "Harith, you have always stood with us. Why go against everyone now? Have you forgotten your place?" The jab hit its mark, and for a moment, Harith faltered. The old fear crept back in, but he held his ground. "Majority opinion does not guarantee truth," he replied, his voice ringing with a conviction he hadn't felt in years. "The people who follow blindly can make mistakes, and the one who stands for justice may be few boot. The reward with Allah is great." Just as the crowd began to dismiss him, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the noise. It was Sheikh Amin, who had been watching from the shade of a date palm. He walked slowly to Harith's side, his presence alone commanding respect. "Indeed, my son," the sheikh said, placing a reassuring hand on Harith's shoulder. He then turned to the crowd. "Many years ago, when I was a young man in a village far from here, a plague struck our livestock. The majority, driven by fear, decided to sacrifice their remaining healthy animals to a pagan idol. An old tradition they hoped would appease angry spirits. I was alone in my refusal, reminding them that our faith teaches us to turn only to Allah in times of hardship. They called me a fool. They threatened to exile me." The square fell silent, captivated by the story. "I stood my ground," the sheikh continued, "and I prayed. Days later, a caravan of healers, guided by a dream, arrived with medicine for the animals. My trust in Allah was vindicated. Standing for truth is often a lonely path, but it is never the wrong one. The companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, were often in the minority. Remember the story of Abu Bakr in the early days of Islam, when the majority ridiculed or doubted the believers, yet he and the few who followed the truth were guided and protected by Allah." Harith felt a surge of strength from the sheikh's words and his story. He was not just he was part of a long tradition of standing for what is right. He turned back to the crowd, his fear replaced by a profound sense of purpose. "Let us not be a people who deny water to the thirsty," he proposed. "Let us share the water fairly, giving priority to those in most need, the sick, the elderly, and those who labor under the same sun as us." He then reminded them of another verse from the Qur'an, "And help one another in righteousness and piety, and do not help one another in sin and aggression." Surah Al-Ma'idah 5:22. The merchant and his supporters were still resistant, but the sheikh's story and Harith's unwavering conviction had shifted the ground beneath them. They saw the justice in Harith's words. Slowly, one by one, they nodded in agreement. The tide of opinion had turned, not by force, but by the quiet power of truth. The fair distribution plan was agreed upon. Later that day, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sand, Harith stood by the well, helping his friend Jamal fill his water skin. Jamal looked at him, his eyes filled with a gratitude that needed no words. In that moment, Harith felt a sense of peace he had never known in all his years of conforming. He had finally used his gift, not for acceptance, but for justice. He had learned that true belonging is not found in the comfort of the crowd, but in the quiet, unshakable alignment of one's heart, mind, and soul with the truth.